I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, what are you doing in this beautiful car? I'm like, I'm going off-road. He's like, are you sure? Because you can use one of ours. And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Sometimes it takes a different approach to help you unlock your true potential. Capella University's game-changing FlexPath format helps you learn at your own pace and fit earning a degree into your life. From before you enroll to after you graduate, you'll be supported by people who are invested in your success so you can pursue your goals knowing that help is available if you need it. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
Today's episode of The James Altucher Show is being brought to you by the Stansberry Conference Series. If you'd like to meet Penn Jillette in person, we've made it easy. Just go to stansberryconference.com/Altucher. And when you sign up, you'll also get to meet James. We're hosting this 3-day event at the 5-star Aria Hotel in Las Vegas next month. So if you need an excuse to come to Vegas, well, here it is. For more information about this event, just go to stansberryconference.com/Altucher. Thanks. And now here's James' interview with Penn Jillette.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network.
So we've got 20 minutes, and normally that's a little shorter than my usual format, so I've got an idea for you. We're going to do 20 questions in 20 minutes with Penn Jillette.
Okay.
Okay, you like that idea?
Sure.
All right.
I give long answers, so it won't actually work. It's a good idea.
I'm going to interrupt you. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right. You've been like a skeptic since you were a kid. You're known to have been inspired by the amazing Randy, who I've actually seen him perform. He kind of uncovers scams or tricks in the magic industry. Do you have any advice for others on how they can find what their calling is? Like, you saw the amazing Randy and you said, bam, that's what I've got to do. What do you recommend to others who want a similar kind of inspiration?
Well, there's an expression that I first heard from Kinky Friedman, the Texas Jew boy, who once said, he was quoting someone else, but I can't find who, find what you love and let it kill you.
Has magic killed you?
No, but it will. Although my passion was never magic, you know. Magic was something I got into because of Teller. Magic was not, you know, I was a juggler and a writer and cared a little bit about comedy, but I never cared much about magic. I think it's important. I think it's really important. The Roztok Manifesto, a thing written by Gary Panter for the avant-garde group The Residents, said, if you don't like supermarket music, for Christ's sake, start making supermarket music. What it means is, if you don't go into a form that you love. Don't be Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses loved the Rolling Stones. We already had the Rolling Stones. Let the Rolling Stones do it. I would much rather see someone get into hard rock who hated hard rock.
But let me ask you a question on that, and I'm sorry to interrupt. it seems like in your act, you and Teller always take it to what's called the adjacent possible. So like when you appeared in your act, when you were the first magic act to do full frontal nudity, it seems like you're always taking your act and asking each other, what can we do now that's never been done? So you're not the Rolling Stones, you're the Rolling Stones plus full frontal nudity.
Well, yes, my whole point is you want to get into a form that you don't think there's anyone in doing stuff you love. If you love the Rolling Stones, you shouldn't be in a rock and roll band because the Rolling Stones got you covered.
Unless you do a band where you take it one step further, like Rolling Stones.
The Rolling Stones aren't doing it, are they?
Right.
That's my point. I loved the Velvet Underground. I loved Frank Zappa. I loved Bob Dylan. I knew I couldn't do better than them, so I didn't get into music.
I'm a strong believer that the average 18-year-old kid shouldn't be sentenced to 4 years of solitary confinement in college. You sort of agreed. You went to clown college. Like, how did you...
That's 2 months. The word college is just a joke.
Right, exactly. So how did you decide to go that direction? And what did your parents think? Like, what was happening in your life when you were 18?
My parents, it was a big deal because my mom finished high school. My dad did not. And they believed that their lives would have been better and easier had they had a chance to go to college. So I was the first person in my family was going to go to college. And I've always tested very well. So I was going to be able to get into college and indeed did have pretty much full scholarships to whatever college I wanted to go to. I went because of SAT scores and so on. I went to visit those colleges, and those colleges had people doing drugs and listening to bad music. And what I hated about high school was drugs and bad music.
But it seems like being 18 and having that kind of, I hate to use the word, but authenticity with yourself. Like most people are trying to fit in, but you know enough about yourself to say, okay, I'm not going to fit in with that music. I'm going to do my own thing.
I had the longest hair in my school. I had eye makeup. I hated drugs. I hated the Grateful Dead.
And you were 6'5".
7, but yes. So I went to visit these college campuses, and they were more of the same assholes smoking the same dope, listening to the same shitty music. And I said to my guidance counselor, if you can find me a school where you can guarantee me there'll be no God and no drugs, I'm there.
And he found you a clown college? Did he do that as a joke?
He didn't find me clown college. I found them on my own.
And
the guidance counselor just said, no, well, you can be like you were here. You can kind of keep to yourself. And I kind of said, no, I can be like I'm going to be in the world, and that is kind of keep to myself. So I created a world that has no drugs and no God.
That's great having that insight at 18. Like, I don't think I developed that insight until I was age 40 that I could create my world.
Yeah.
And so I've been catching up.
But even Christopher Hitchens, when he came to my house, left the alcohol at the door.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
So what did you learn in clown college? What was the biggest thing you've learned in clown college?
The biggest thing I learned is the first person I ever met in show business was me. I'm from a small bed factory town in western Massachusetts. Show business was not an option. When I went to clown college, I met other people who actually thought seriously about the idea of comedy. I never even knew that existed except for writers. The idea of being able to sit on a beach in Florida and say, why is Buster Keaton funny? Why are the Marx Brothers funny? Why are the Stooges funny? Why is Lenny Bruce funny? Was really, really important to me because I wanted two things. I mean, I wanted more than anything to be pretentious. I love being pretentious.
Why'd you love that?
And I love being highfalutin.
I've heard you quote about that as that's almost a leveling factor. Like if you have as strong opinions as possible, but are honest about it and authentic about it, you'll actually get along better with people of the opposite opinion even.
Of course. That's the respectful thing. But I've always liked highfalutin stuff. I've always liked serious literature. The problem is that whenever I would talk about anything, people laughed at me. So I was forced into comedy. What I really want to be is a brooding French poet working in Paris.
You think that will be your next step? Your next
I don't think I'll ever get there. That's what I actually wanted.
It's funny how everybody, no matter who I talk to, does have something that's secretly on the other side of the fence they want to do.
It's not really very secretly. It's just I've always, my sister used to say, that when people asked her what I did, she always answered writer. Writer is, I'm afraid, what I see myself as. The fact that I write for me.
And you've also written like 6 books or however many.
But what I do when there's nothing else to do is I write.
So it's interesting. I asked you, what did you learn the most in clown college? You didn't give a skill, but you gave a whole kind of philosophical theory of getting into, doing what you love. But what is a skill you learned in clown college that you used to this day?
I learned wire walking. I learned tumbling. I learned I was a very, very good juggler when I went to clown college. As a matter of fact, that's how I got in. I was the youngest person in, and I was the last person accepted. I was their very final choice. I only got in because someone else dropped out.
Was juggling good for kind of the hand skills needed for a lot of your magic tricks?
I suppose, although magic is much less skill-oriented than juggling. And I even use some odd definitions. There's this thing called cardistry, which is manipulation with cards, that is very, very popular now. That gets shuttled in with magic, whereas actually it's completely juggling. It's just juggling with cards. And a lot of your sleight of hand stuff comes into the category of juggling. And although I didn't like intellectually, I didn't like magic, I loved learning card sleights.
Why did you intellectually like magic? Is it the word magic itself?
No, I didn't like the idea of an art form that celebrated lying to people.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to get to that. In your early days, you've talked about living out of your car, touring nonstop, working super hard. What's the biggest thing you learned during that time on kind of the rise up?
Well, that was all. I spent all that time with Teller. So everything I learned during that time was from Teller. And Teller was really interested in dramatic structure. Teller was really interested in all sorts of ideas about theater and all sorts of ideas of performance. What I learned during that time, all that time running around doing shows, was what Teller and I did not want to see in a show. We learned very clearly what we didn't want to see. Alfred Hitchcock said, if you want to do great movies, don't see great movies and say, I'm going to do that. See bad movies and say, I'm not going to do that.
That is such great advice. So what did you guys decide you did not want to do in a show?
We did not want to see a greasy guy in a tux with a lot of birds torturing women in front of Mylar and a bad small dick white boy rip-off Motown music. That's what we did not want to see.
So is that like David Copperfield?
Well, there's a lot of people in that. I mean, David Copperfield is the best of those, and he has grown out of that. But we did not want to see that kind of... See, here's the thing that's so fascinating about magic. Magic is a playful study of epistemology. It's a study of how we ascertain truth. But magicians piss that away. They piss that away by saying, oh, come with me on a magic journey. This is a dream I had last night. They try to turn magic into special effects. And magic, as Teller has said so succinctly, is the unwilling suspension of disbelief. It's not the willing suspension of disbelief. If Shakespeare writes, we're in a storm on an island, you just go, okay, we're in a storm on an island. If he writes, this guy is king of Denmark, you go, okay, he's king of Denmark, even though I saw him in a shampoo commercial last week. But magicians, if they say, this hand is empty, you expect them to prove it. And that is the unwilling suspension of disbelief. You're not supposed to play along with a magician. And yet magicians working at that time had all this sense of, come on, play along with me. Just have fun with me. Just come on and watch this. So they were doing illusions and not tricks. And we wanted to do tricks and not illusions.
I see. So they were doing a lot of the kind of smoke, and the tricks would happen under the smoke, and we were supposed to suspend disbelief while that happened.
You were supposed to play along with them. You were supposed to say, oh, this is a dream you had about painting a woman last night and then she came to life. That's not a dream you had, you lying sack of shit. This is just a prop you found that you painted this way, and now this is the way you've staged it.
I'm going to guess, since their audience at that time, like let's say the early 80s, late 70s, were kids like me, that kids did have the suspension of disbelief. We didn't know. We didn't know to look.
Oh, no, you're absolutely wrong. Children, more than anyone, are aware of tricks. They're very, very aware of tricks. When my son and daughter were 5 years old, They cared very much about trickery. As a matter of fact, no one is more obsessed with tricks and lying than children in their preteens. I mean, really. So when you were watching magic specials, you didn't say, I'm watching this like Star Wars. You said, I'm watching this like someone is doing tricks for me. And yet the magician was pretending that wasn't the case.
I guess there was some aspect of trying to solve the puzzle.
Sure, of course. You have to go beyond. It should not be special effects, and it should not be solving the puzzle. It should be an intellectual study with comedy, moving fast, of how you ascertain what's true. That's what magic is always dealing with. Even the worst magic, done really, really badly, is still dealing with how do we ascertain truth.
So I want to understand that a little more. So when you do just the cups trick, which people could Google you and Teller doing the cups trick, what truth are you ascertaining there?
I mean, there's a very simple base level of that, which is if this kind of thing can be done at this base level, this silly a trick that's been around for thousands of years, if that can be done and really give the impression of something that I know to begin with is impossible, then these are the things I have to look for in life to how we ascertain truth. I mean, very simply, it tells you seeing is not believing, and very simply, it tells you that people lie. Now, when you lay that out, it's showing you that there are machinations below the surface that you may not be privy to. And just that emotional idea is important.
It's like you're using magic as a pathway to explain skepticism in some sense.
Well, yes, well, they are the same to me. There's two forks of magic that are very clearly represented throughout history. There's the fork of magic that is priests and holy people and witch doctors that try to claim that their tricks are real. Then there is the fork of magic that starts with a book called The Discovery of Witchcraft in the 16th century, which is the first book to ever deal with magic as though it were tricks. And that continues famously to Houdini, who was very much this is all tricks, and then continues today with Amazing Randy. Now, the other branch continues with David Blaine, who is a friend of mine. We've talked about this and argued about this completely for hours about the subject. He believes that it's the magician's job to confuse the reality of the world. He is proud about giving facts that are not true that people believe.
So for instance, if he's like hanging 100 feet in the air with no food, he might claim that's real and not that it's a trick that, the way you always are upfront, this is a trick. He's saying, I've trained for 100 years and now I'm doing this and it's not a trick.
Yeah, and which is very strange because a guy who is doing card tricks the week before, the next week says, oh, and by the way, I also have these secret powers.
Yeah, it's funny. I've met Uri Geller, the pseudo-psychic, and he's actually done these tricks for me that were so obviously tricks that it was ridiculous, but he wanted to create a website where you hit a button and you get psychic powers by hitting that button. And that was how he was going to make money during the internet boom. But that's another story. So yeah. Was there ever
That's a surprising story? He's that kind of cat.
Was there ever a low point in your career where you thought, damn, maybe I'm going to have to get a real job?
That option, that door was closed to me because I can't do anything. My other option is to go to jail. Teller had a lot of options. Teller was a high school classics teacher. He's a Latin and Greek scholar. He actually gave up something to go into magic. I was homeless, living on the streets, so I didn't give up a lot to do this.
Why did he take a chance on you and vice versa?
I think we thought very early on, although we did not like each other, we thought very early on we could do better stuff together than we could separately.
Was there ever a point where you thought, okay, man, I'm so happy I finally made it. I can keep doing this forever?
Well, yes, very, very early on. I mean, I would say within 3 months. I was making, my dad was a jail guard. Teller's dad was a commercial artist. We began to make as much money as our dads doing what we loved instead of what we hated, which was something, my dad never talked about being a jail guard. I mean, that's one of the worst jobs you can have. He never spoke about it. He was wonderful to his family. He was loving. He was caring. He was the perfect dad and never talked about that. But as I got older, I realized, he didn't like that job. I now have all that love that I have for my family, but I also have a job that I look forward to doing. I even look forward to talking to you.
Oh, I look forward to it too. After 3 months, though, do you think you were able to obtain that much success because you had that extra difference in your act? You had almost like this theater influence plus this skepticism influence.
It was a couple things. It was one that my needs were very low. I was 19 years old. I was single. I didn't care where I slept or what I ate. The amount of money you need to make to be successful at that level is pretty low. Second of all, I was a really good street performer. I could always make a shit ton of money just walking out on the street and opening a suitcase and juggling.
Okay, so juggling, but how did you learn the skills to do, let's say, the magic tricks?
We just worked them out. Teller read a lot, and we studied and learned and figured it out.
But there's some skills like palming the coins and cards and things like that. How many hours, years, months do you think you put in?
That's the whole thing about magic. There's only one trick we do, and that trick is we're willing to work harder than you think we would work. So we just put in a trick in the show that runs 3 minutes that Teller and I worked on 6 years solid. You would not work 6 years to do 3 minutes. We would.
So, okay, let me, on a slightly different topic, you recently lost 105 pounds. Congratulations. Did you have to redesign any of your tricks because your body was different?
Some of the suits, most of the suits are rigged. They're gimmicked. The tricks are built into the pockets, handling and stuff. And all the suits had to be retailored dramatically. And that was a huge pain in the ass and tremendously expensive. I had to change the way I talked because the way people look at you on stage changes with a difference of 100 pounds. When I would do monologues before, there was a kind of a power in standing there like a monolith, just in being, it's very funny, but the gravity of what you're saying is also affected by the actual gravity, the pull of gravity on you. When I got lighter and smaller, I had to move more. I changed the way I spoke, changed the way I...
Did you talk deeper?
I'm talking about, no, I'm not even talking about timbre, although that changed too. I'm just talking about the way words feel, the way timing feels is different with a different body. When you can be a little more aggressive when you're fatter, and when you're thinner, you have to be a little more smiling. I get friendlier when I was thinner. All of this stuff is very, very important, but very, very hard to actually quantify.
So it seems like what you're talking about, what it makes me feel is that there's kind of the basic tricks people know, whatever, but then the real art is the rhythm and performative aspects of what you're doing.
As with any field, it's always everything. It's always everything. And the tricks have to be perfect. One of the big mistakes young magicians make is they get really excited about an idea, a concept for a trick that really may be absolutely brilliant, and they may absolutely love it. But then they think that the idea is so good, they don't have to do it perfectly. Once you get the brilliant idea, then you've got to do all the stupid shit, all the really stupid shit. So we've got an idea that's from our hearts, never been done before, is brilliant. Then we have to have someone sitting way over stage left, way over stage right, and up in the balcony and going, no, I can see your left hand. Nope, nope, nope. And it's really frustrating because you think you've got this great idea, and then you have to then do this dumb stuff to present it. The only useful thing I learned in high school, one thing, I went to a really shitty high school, terrible. One useful thing I learned, and that was one substitute teacher one day said in front of a creative writing class, no one wants to read what you write. No one does. So make it as easy for them as you can, because the first thing they bump into that gives them an excuse not to read, they will stop. The first word that's misspelled, the first thing's a little hard to read, people move right on. So you've got a brilliant, a brilliant idea, like my friend Christian Bach, who wrote a book called Eunoia, okay, which I thought I had right there, I don't. A book called Eunoia, which a chapter is written with just one vowel. So there's the chapter that has no vowel in it but A, and he writes the whole book on that. That's a really, really nice idea. And you could get a nice representation of that in about 6 months. He worked 10 years. He worked 10 years on that because every word is perfect and perfectly chosen. If you're doing comedy and you have a really nice, rich, comedic idea and you want to lay it out, it'll do okay. But if you really want people to listen, make sure every word is pronounced properly. Make sure that every word is chosen properly. Make sure all your timing is perfect. And when you do something really, really heavy, all the stuff you don't respect. Okay, so you're going to do this really intellectual magic trick. And you've got it all laid out. You want to do it as smart as Bob Dylan. And you're all set to go and all set to do that. Then you've got to remember that you've got to be just as dirt dumb as everybody on AM radio. You've got to play it. So when you've got an idea for a song, I mean, Bob Dylan's a great example. You've got an idea for Blonde on Blonde, the most brilliant pop record ever done. Okay? He's got ideas for songs that are absolutely brilliant. Songs that are so good that if you just pulled out a guitar, recited the lyrics and played the chords, I'd be pretty impressed. But then Bob goes to Nashville and gets the best sessions cats possible and the best producers and gets those things played absolutely beautifully. Because there are some people that the snare drum is not well recorded are going to go, the brilliant idea won't carry you through. So the most important thing is everything.
So I read recently the average child laughs 300 times a day on average. The average adult laughs just 5 times a day on average. You seem to have reversed that pattern somehow. So how do you find kind of what makes you different? Like how do you find the things to laugh at that you laugh at?
I don't know. I just don't know. One of the things may be, that I had, I'm the one guy who had the Leave It to Beaver upbringing. My parents were perfect. They treated me wonderfully. I've always been treated well. And I don't know, maybe that's, you're getting into the nature nurture debate. And I don't really know the answer, but I sure do like being alive. And I think a big part of that is atheism. I don't think you can be as happy as someone who's religious. Someone who's religious is by definition not as happy as someone who's living life here and now.
Just because they're pinning their hopes on some future.
Yeah, and automatically, the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah. I'm not counting all religions because I'm not counting any of the Eastern religions, but what is called jokingly the Mediterranean death cults, the Abrahamic religions, those 3, they are built on the idea that this world is miserable suffering and is a test for the next world.
Well, think about it. What started off those religions was God telling the 96-year-old Abraham to cut off part of his dick so that he could have a kid. And from there, everything started.
Everything goes to shit.
Right. So speaking of being a dad, though, what you've done a lot of reality TV, and one of my favorites was the Celebrity Wife Swap, and you're like a really good parent. And now I'm a parent of 2 kids. What advice would you give on parenting?
Oh, Jiminy, certainly not qualified. Struggling through ad-libbing, trying to save my ass every second. But it's very easy because you have built-in biological love. And everybody that's going to be a parent, I tell them, my parents told me You will never understand how much we love you until you have children. And I thought I could not love my parents more. Well, I love my parents more than anyone in the world till my children came along. And now I say to them, you can't understand this. And the wonderful thing about that is it's like sex. It's completely biological. You don't have control over how much you love your children. And that's wonderful. And that's what gets you through.
I always believe in building up routines, having good habits, improving myself, let's say in small increments, 1% a day or however you count it. What would you think is a habit that has helped you kind of incrementally improve? And what routine or habit or anything you have to share that has helped you improve throughout the years?
I write a journal every day, like a teenage girl. I start my day by writing a journal. And I find that with my kind of memory, I can't forget something until I write it down. Once I write something down, I can let it go. I also read my journal every morning before I do anything else. I read 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and 1 year ago. And I know that if I have the exact same problem today that I had one of those times, something drastic has to change.
Like what?
Well, if I have a person a year ago that I'm writing, this person's a pain in the ass, I don't know if they're worth having around me this much. And then a year later, I'm reading the same thing. Chances are I don't return that email.
So you've obviously had a lot of inspirations, books, music, different theater, whatever. What are some of your biggest inspirations?
Bob Dylan, Herman Melville, Nicholson Baker, Christian Bach, Frank Zappa, Lou Reed, Miles Davis, Mingus, Picasso, Warhol. All of those people are in my mind all the time.
Let me ask you, what is it about Picasso?
It's the Bob Dylan painting right behind me here.
What is it?
It's Bob Dylan.
Oh, that's
painting.
cool. So what did you learn from Picasso? I'm just curious because I'm fascinated by Picasso as well.
What I learned is that in art, actually this is true for any one of those people you'd ask me. In art, you need both inspiration and skill. If you have one, you can go pretty far. We all know the crazy person who can't do anything. We'd love to watch what they do. We also know the skilled person that has all the chops, but there's no heart exploding. Picasso was as good a traditional artist as you could find, and then he was crazy enough to really create. Now, what I just said is true for Miles Davis, true for Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's a fine guitar player. He could have played just folk music his whole life, but he had always this inspiration. So what I've always learned is you've got to do both. You've got to be brave enough to do shit that is absolutely bug nutty crazy, and then you've got to work hard enough to make that being done perfectly skillful.
I'm gonna add one little thing to it, which is I went to the opening of the Andy Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh like 23 years ago, perhaps, or 20 years ago, and I couldn't believe there was like 9 stories filled with his work, and Picasso did 50,000 pieces of art in his life. So there's the kind of the skill, there's the inspiration, and then there's the sheer persistence and consistency to it. And what you described earlier is the work of it.
Also true with Bob Dylan, also true with Miles Davis.
So, we've done 20 questions in 33 minutes. I'm really impressed. I really appreciate the time. I'm sorry I went over time a little bit for you, but I'll be seeing you in person in a couple months, and I look forward to it.
Thanks. I look forward to it too. Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Penn. Thanks. Bye.
For more from James, check out the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network at stansberryradio.com and get yourself on the free insiders list today.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.